Welcome back to Switched to Linux. Well, another privacy browser hit the market. This is called EULA. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this is based out of India, and it is from the company called Zoho. Now, I did look at Zoho as a big company's overall privacy policies, and as far as big companies go, it actually has a very good privacy policy. It's only collecting the data that it absolutely needs. It's not doing a lot of things like System 1 where it's buying and collating data. It has very good mechanisms in place to delete your data. Of course, if you've not heard of it, they are a supplier of a very large, in India, CRM, an EPS, and productivity software, basically a competitor to like LibreOffice or Microsoft Word. So that is what the company itself offers, and now they're coming out with a privacy browser. Now, on the positive end, this means that we have a privacy browser that is backed by a very successful, in India's terms, company already. And so this is actually pretty good in that respect. There are a few different concerns. Of course, I was made aware of this on our Matrix server. You can head on over to our Matrix server over there. If you can't find it in the public listing, I don't know why it wasn't in the public listing. It might be by now. Who knows? You can head on over to the website, switchedtolinux.com, go to the very bottom, and look for the logo for Element, and that is going to be a link to the Matrix server. So one of the people over there said, hey, it's proprietary. So I decided to go ahead and look around and see if I could find the source code, and I can't. So that certainly is an issue against it, and it turns out there's a few other issues to look at as well. So we're going to go ahead and look at all the website stuff, and then we're going to actually go ahead and look at it in a web browser and see what it looks like overall. So let's go ahead and start in at their main website. So this is EULA, ulaa.zoho.com. And so you can actually come over here. The first thing that really struck me is there's this little icon up here, like, what's this? So you click on this guy here, and it's like, here is your sign in, access to access EULA. You don't actually have to sign in to access the web browser. There is, I decided I'd click on the sign up now button, see what they're asking for. They're asking for a first name, last name, email address, password, and then, of course, they get the country and the state level, not asking for much more than that. And, of course, you have to agree to their terms of service and their privacy policies. As I said, their privacy policy and their terms of service is not horrible as far as big companies are involved. Of course, every company basically has to have one now because of GDPR and the California and the Illinois and the Utah and the Maine and all of these other privacy laws. That it's great we're getting some of them. Unfortunately, none of them actually have any teeth to actually be privacy laws. They're more like informed consent laws. Or actually coerced consent laws is probably a better way to put it. But with that being said, let's head on back to the site here. Of course, they do have a Linux option here. You hit the download for Linux. We have a Windows, and what it's going to do is it's going to download an SH file. We're going to examine that not on this computer. We're going to examine that on a different computer. But we have a Windows, we have an Intel Mac, we have an ARM64 Mac, we have Android, and we have iOS. So let's see, need EULA for other ones, get it for your desired OS. All right. So over here, of course, they have a EULA terms of service and a privacy policy. So we want to have a brief look at those first. This is the EULA, and so end user license agreement, and a lot of it's fairly standard things, but for a privacy browser, I thought a few items in here were specifically interesting for a quote-unquote privacy browser. You acknowledge and agree that Zoho, wherever applicable, will periodically provide automatic updates to the browser to address security issues, improve performance, and hence functionality, or to provide bug fixes. So the browser forces itself to update. You don't have any choice in that. This is, of course, the biggest backdoor to push malware into anything. And obviously, Zoho is a reputable company, but we have seen supply chain breaches where a malicious actor will get into the supply chain, poison, and push an update that you don't have the choice to update or not, and then you now have malware. So whether or not it's done intentionally or unintentionally, it is a problem when the software wants to force updates without giving you a choice. All right. The next one, of course, this is obviously problematic. By default, it collects certain details pertaining to your usage of the browser, such as the version of the browser you're using, the operating system of your device, and the configuration of the device from which the browser is installed, the basic usage details. In addition to the basic user details, it will also collect certain usage data if you enable the anonymized stats feature, which is disabled by default, or B, sign into the browser, which of course I recommend people never sign into their web browsers. It just opens too many cans of worms that are too tough to push back into that can there. So they agree to furnish details of the data collected regarding your usage upon request. So let's go ahead and open that little, oh, not that way. I pushed the wrong button. We'll go ahead and open that guy up there, and we'll have a look at that brief page next. Here's ownership, intellectual property, confidentiality. You agree and acknowledge the browser and the source code applicable documentations contain proprietary information. So that is where we understand this is a proprietary browser. So we have no real way of auditing the code. We have to trust them that the code is good. This is, by the way, the reason I did not install it on my main system. I installed it in a virtual machine. So we'll go ahead and have a look at that. And of course, there's all the other stuff, the legal mumbo jumbo that's usually in there. What data does EULA collect from the users? You kind of see what we have a problem here, right? This is not really a privacy browser. All right, but we're going to look at it anyway. Why not? All right, the document lists the data EULA browser collects and gives a detailed explanation for what purposes the data is collected, and EULA processes it. The data collected by EULA is to improve the browser experience. Yeah, my browser experience is improved by you not collecting my data. The user can choose not to send them by changing in preferences. It collects a list of data from you directly when you use or interact with it. So, of course, some of these things you can turn on, some of the things you have to. So this, let's see, this action does not affect the features or anything else. We collect data to improve the browser or to develop the product, and if you choose to send anonymized stats from the browser preferences. So here is only EULA team can access all the data mentioned below with a few exceptional circumstances. There are a few instances it collects from the user. Browser version. So what version, and to identify how frequently the users update the browser. In other words, how frequently do you use the browser? So your current installed browser version will be sent. So it just tells us the browser. Randomized browser ID to calculate the total number of people using it. So the user IDs are randomly generated, and it randomly generates them when the browser is started. So by collecting this data block here, it's going to basically tell them by the number of these data blocks collected, it's going to be able to tell them how many, not only how many people have used it, but how frequently is the user using it. So it's like how many times. It's not the total number of people using the browser, it's the total number of times the browser has been used globally, because according to their documentation, the user ID updates every time. Device configuration, device in the architecture to identify the total number of browser installations, and configuration of device will be sent. So 8664 or ARM64, and device operating system. Y to identify the total number of browser installations in respective operating systems. The operating system information will be collected. So, Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever else. That is the stuff that's always sent. And then you have options. I believe these are the other stats. If you enable the anonymized stats, it sends the browser, browser version, randomized browser UID, device configuration, basically all the same basic things. If the user is signed in, if the current mode is default true, current mode. So this is actually, we'll get into the modes. The browser has a series of modes in it. So It wants to know what mode you're using. That's very interesting. When they have signed into a Zoho account, it sends browser information, browser UID, profile UID, the Zoho UID, the host name, the current mode, if the current mode is the default mode, the default configuration, the operating system, and your IP address. So this privacy browser collects your IP address. When the user is part of an organization, of course, here's all the different information there as well. So already we have raised a few issues. Here's the global privacy policy for the company. We have a global one, we have a California one, we have a UK one. And this is where every site has to start doing this kind of stuff. It's a bunch of nonsense. There's nothing in here that's major out of the ordinary, although it's more on the lean side than on the dangerous side. If you said, hey, you must trust either Zoho with your data or System 1 with your data, I'm taking Zoho 100% of the time. So it is definitely better, albeit not perfect. Let's get into their releases really quick because I had just heard about this. It turns out that their first alphas 025 came out in September 2020, so right when the world was coughing a lot, and then up into the betas, and then actually the very first non-beta release was just within first non-beta release was April 20th, 2023. So we're talking about just about 2 weeks ago from the time I'm recording the video, and they've pushed 2 separate updates since then. All right, so when we get over here, these are the things that they allege to do. Again, it is proprietary software, so really the only thing to do is to plug it up to Wireshark and analyze the data and see if you can figure it out. They do have an anonymized statistics. How great, 24-hour security patch, so they will patch security holes very quickly. Auto updates on all platforms, protection against high-risk security threats. Geographic data isolation. I was trying to figure out what exactly this meant. They indicated, let me see if I can, I don't want to click off the page specifically, but what they were saying on this is that they'll actually geo-restrict some things, I think is what I was understanding. Like, what? I have no earthly idea. I had to read that several times. So here is what they're saying is going to do. That red highlighting is there. You can see I highlight in yellow. EULA, is it funny that EULA is pronounced like end user license agreement? I don't know, or is it EULA? I don't know. Somebody from India, correct my pronunciation here, please. So they provide state-of-the-art features to ensure your personal information is kept confidential. No data sent to third parties, no push client channel updates, no metrics reporting, no motion sensing, no serial API. So basically they've gone into the Chromium code. This is based on Chromium. They've gone into the Chromium code and they have gotten rid of a lot of the backend telemetry. So I'm wondering, is this similar to or somewhat similar to ungoogled Chromium? I don't know to what degree because, again, it is proprietary. We can't exactly see. They do have a series of modes. There's a work mode, a developer mode, they have a personal mode, they do have a kids mode, and they have an open season mode. The open season mode was actually what the registrar was thinking is kind of odd. So Zoho creates a browser with open season mode for when you don't care about privacy. So the privacy browser has an open season mode for when you don't care about privacy. I'm not going to be quite as harsh about it as the register is, because even Tails has an unsafe browser, because there's times you might need it. There's times you need to do something that absolutely requires you to have this open season mode enabled. I wouldn't use it a lot, but it is certainly something that they have. So that's what they have done. And then here's your current browser is not built for productivity, but EULA is. Basically, they're doing this because they have different productivity modes, and each one of these you can load in different default websites, all sorts of things like that. And they're just talking about their different features over here. And so looking at the modes in a little bit more detail, and it looks like, is that the page we were on? I don't know. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump on over to see what this actually looks like. So we're going to jump over into a Linux Mint virtual machine, and we'll have a look at this from here. All right, so over here on Linux Mint, the first thing we're going to do is let's have a brief look at the download that we had. So the install EULA browser download, let's just open it up in text editor so you guys can see what's going on in here. So very simple bash script, and you can see it's first thing it wants to do is it wants to make sure you have curl installed, and the EULA, these are just your basic variables. We have a silent install option as well, which will just give yes on everything. Otherwise, you have to sit there and push yes a couple times. First thing it's going to do is curl installed. If not, it's going to install curl. And then it's going to go ahead, and if the browser is already installed, it will remove this and then remove the source list of the browser itself. If it is not already installed, then it will go ahead and add the public key to it, and it's going to add the repository, and then we are going to grab the browser from the sources list. Let's go ahead and have a brief look at the sources here. Software sources, and it should be in this list over here. I didn't verify that prior to starting. But here's your additional repositories, and you can see actually it added both Google and it added Zoho. So am I seeing Google and Zoho both in here or not? Let me have a look. GBT EULA. I'm guessing maybe the adding this did, because I can't imagine another reason why Google gets added to this, being is that the only thing I did is added the Zoho browser. So at some point in time, the Google sources got added as well. I guess this is probably, yeah, this is from there. So EULA browser.list. And then EULA browser release.list. So they've actually added the Google connections to your system, and they've added that. So how's that for a privacy browser? It's actually adding Google to your software sources list. That's exciting. I wonder if, let's see, EULA browser list. I was wondering if they're going to do, maybe, let's see, source list, EULA browser. I'm wondering if I could install like Google Chrome with that now. I'm wondering now. Let's try it. Sudo apt install. Is it called Google Chrome? Well, I can't find that. Let's try just Chrome. I'm pretty sure it's Google Chrome, so. All right, well, that's good. It's not giving me other stuff, but it is attaching some Google stuff. And then it's basically adding that repository and installing the browser. So there's what we have. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the browser itself. So when you boot up the browser, this is your open season mode. It has 0 restrictions. You read it right. Be aware, this disables the ad blocker and the trackers. So in theory, this form, you can absolutely be tracked. Now, they're doing this again. There's reasons to do this. I'm not going to take the hard stance that Register did because there's reasons to have this mode. But the default mode is this one here, and in the default mode, it's going to go ahead and make sure that all of your basic trackers are in there. Now, of course, we are on my network, so I can't access things like Facebook. You'll see the site can't be reached. This is because my firewall prevents Facebook from being read. We're going to go back to that in a brief moment. All right, in fact, let's go ahead and hit that now, because if I hit the kids mode, first thing we have to do is we have to enter our password. And the reason they do this is because once you put the thing in kids mode, you can't get out of kids mode without the browser again. This is to make sure your kids have the browser, they can do what you say they can do, and then they can't close out of it. Even if you close it and reopen it, it reopens back up in kids mode. But now if I try and go to Facebook, you'll notice that it's blocked by the kids mode. Here's the downside. I have not been able to find the list of what exactly is blocked or a way to unblock it. So if I wanted my kid to access Facebook because I'm brain dead or something, then I don't seem to see the option to do that. I'm sure it exists. I don't know why open season mode showed back up. But let's go ahead and close open season mode. And now let's go ahead and have a look at the basic preferences. Of course, they do have the sign-in options that they want you to do. And of course, I would suggest don't ever do that, especially if you don't want the privacy browser to send your IP address to an Indian-based company. That's exciting. Here is your dynamic work mode. So you can set URLs and get prompted to switch mode. So if you open a site, so if I'm on the personal mode and I open, let's say, switchedtolinux.com, it says, hey, do you want to switch over to your work mode now? So you can actually do that to cause it to automatically switch. Here's your kids mode. You can block extra URLs, but I haven't found a way to show the URLs that are blocked or how to unblock any of those or adjust those. And I did spend some time reading on the website. I was not actually able to find any information. Here is your autofill. It automatically saves passwords. I do not consider that specifically privacy focused. You should be using a password manager, not saving passwords in a browser. And here's import the saved passwords, export the saved passwords. Here's payment options, addresses, and more. And you can see it's going to save and fill addresses automatically, not privacy focused. Definitely not privacy focused. You can perform a safety check. It's going to check is the browser up to date or any passwords compromised, safe browsing extensions. And the default gives us our standards. So it's ad blocking, analytics blocking, malicious software blocking, phishing protection, resource and abuse blocking. Under extreme, we can also do URL tracking, cookie blocking. So basically, extreme would be better for your basic privacy stuff. We are blocking fingerprinting. And we don't actually have our social media filters. Crypto mining protection is not enabled. So these things you should probably want to turn on if you're really being serious about privacy. Your search engine option, of course, they give us DuckDuckStop. And I think Ecosia would be the only other search engine option they even give us here that could even be considered remotely private. And even then, I'm not sure if it really is. Why haven't they added a few other of the privacy alternatives here rather than just, the defaults are fine, let's just go to DuckDuckStop? Because, DuckDuckStop isn't really a simp for Bing anyway. So that is really our only option. So again, they're pretending to be a privacy browser here without actually being a privacy browser. And here's your startup stuff. Nothing major in there. Here's inside of your advanced. So nothing out there out of the ordinary. And here is our basic EULA screen here. They are running on the current version of Chromium, and they are updating any of your security stuff. And this is where if you want to turn on anonymized stats, you can go ahead and do that. The other option we have is... I thought it was under here. There was an option to, maybe we just need to get out of preferences there. Let me get out of, let's go to startpage.com. Okay, so here we have our kids, open season, developer, work, and incognito. And this is where our modes is. If you want to manage your modes, you can go ahead and do this. Although I don't see a lot of really management options other than you can enable and disable the different mode options in here. So if you don't have no need for the kids mode, you can go ahead and disable it in there, and then that will not appear in your modes any longer. You'll see that. So that's what you can do there. So overall, what they're doing a decent job at here is they are allegedly doing some modifications to the code to prevent a lot of tracking, but since it's not open source code, we can't really tell exactly what's going on. They do give us really nice options for isolating things, giving us the completely unblocked. This is the thing that, sometimes LibreWolf can be annoying because the site won't work. This is if they had an open season mode, that would actually solve that problem. So we have that. That's actually good to have. So I'm not going to criticize them for that because there's times you need that. But they do a really good job of isolating the other modes out and separating each of the different methodologies. As far, though, as really advanced privacy-based stuff, I don't really see it as a huge privacy step in terms of all of the other options that we have available to us. So of course we looked at Malvad, we looked at LibreWolf recently. both of those are going to be light years ahead of this as far as a good privacy browser option. We don't have the way we don't have a way of verifying it's not collecting a bunch of data, and we actually have a browser that by default is collecting an anonymous data, quote unquote, without the ability to turn it off, and then they would like you to possibly turn on other ones or log into the browser so that they can collect even more information. And notice that the list that we went through earlier, that whether or not you have that anonymized data turned on, if you're logged in, it collects a lot more data. So this is something to be concerned. So you'll probably be seeing a little bit more about this one in the news. I do not consider this a privacy browser. It certainly is a decent thing. It has the advantages, of course, going for it, that it is the first privacy browser based on the Chromium engine rather than the Firefox engine, so at least we have something slightly different. If Firefox totally folds, this might be an option to consider. The other big thing we have going for it is it's supported by a big company that seems to already have a track record of being decent about privacy. Not saying it's perfect about privacy, but it's being decent about privacy, and that really is a good thing in and of itself. So as far as my overall recommendation, I would probably not use this one unless there's something in here that you really specifically need, or maybe you just add it for the times that you need a browser that's completely open to the internet and just turn it on for that open season mode. That would be a fun option too. But those are basically my thoughts about it. I don't think it's an amazing privacy-focused browser. I don't think it's going to be competing super well in this sphere, but overall, it does give us another option, something to think about, and another browser for those of us that know how to use Wireshark and look for all the weird back-end telemetry stuff to look at and let us know what they're really doing right and wrong. That would be an awesome thing. I don't like that it's proprietary. I don't like that it's adding Google repositories to my Linux Mint install, and I don't like the fact that it's based on the Chromium engine, because the Firefox engine, we can do a whole lot more stuff with it. This is where Molvad and LibreWolf, they both try and look like all other instances of itself on the internet. This one does not appear to try and do that. So all they have is the basic anti-fingerprinting that's available on Chrome. And I don't really consider that to be necessarily a huge advantage. So there's overall my thoughts about the EULA browser. Let me know your thoughts down below. Have you used it? Let me know your experiences with it. Will you not touch it with a 100-foot pole? Let me know why. And all that other fun discussion down in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Have a look over the website switchedtolinux.com, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.